Hey, what's up, Star Wars fans? Thank y'all so much for clicking on today's video. It's been quite a while since I've done a long form video like this, about 6 months, believe it or not. But today I got something really fun for y'all. If you checked out Skeleton Crew, you're already gonna know who this guy is, and in today's video I'm gonna show you how I printed, sanded, and painted. So that's coming up next. Alright, so clearly I skipped out on the first couple steps of this helmet, so I just wanted to talk about them right here real quick. So first things first, this helmet is clearly split into 4 different pieces because I could not fit the entire helmet on my printer, but the kind of funny part is I couldn't even fit it on my printer after I split it into 4 parts. I still had to downsize it. I believe this is 85%-ish of the original file. After gluing the 4 pieces together, I used a combination of Bondo, that's the red, and wood filler, that's the yellow, to get rid of the seam lines. I like to talk about what I didn't do very well on this channel a lot. And here you can see how wide I went with the Bondo and the wood filler in spots, and that really kind of ate up some of the detail in parts of the model. It's not very noticeable, you'll see later in the video, but if I did this all over again, I would not go that wide with it. A good thing about models like this one with a lot of texture and a lot of detail is that you don't really have to go heavy sanding like you typically would. So here I like to just kind of wet it and start with like a 220, maybe even a 320, and just really do a light sanding, really just hitting any high spots. You're really not worried about the layer lines here like you typically would be. Alright, so I'm using the Rust-Oleum filler primer here. It's an automotive brand filler primer. They also have a filler and sandable, but I find both versions to be pretty comparable, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick up. I like to start with just a light coat, kind of a dusting if you will, and then go into heavier coats after that. You want to give the primer just a little tiny amount of time to kind of set and dry before you do the other layer. So after that light layer, I'm doing the heavy layer here in this part of the video, but after the light layer, I'll wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then after each heavy layer, I'll wait 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, depending on what I'm doing, but at least 30 minutes. Oh, and for this round of primer, I'll do 2 heavy coats. After giving the primer a day or 2 to dry, I go in with kind of 220 again, maybe 180, maybe a little bit lower than 220 this time around, but this is kind of like I said earlier, a whole lot more important if you're actually trying to get rid of layer lines. With this model and this much texture and all that good stuff, there's really not any layer lines here. And here's a really good shot of kind of what I meant earlier by I went way too wide with the Bondo and really kind of lost some detail. You can see, especially around the trunk with all those lines. I did try to go back in later and kind of carve those lines back out, but I couldn't really think of any good way of bringing the texture of the actual file back out. I must have forgotten to film the second round of primer that I did, because here you can obviously see that all those marks that I had in the last shot are gone, but I'm wet sanding for the final time here. This is going to be the final sanding you have to do here. I'm using 320 to start, and eventually I'm going to go back in at 400 to really just kind of smooth everything out and make it all nice and crisp and soft and all that good stuff. I'm using this ivory silk to base coat the entire helmet head Neel thing. I just kind of wanted something kind of close to a skin tone to kind of work off with. After this, I'm going to go and start using airbrush colors, but right now I'm just base coating the entire helmet. It's kind of like what I did earlier with the primer. You do a light kind of dusting coat first, and then give that a couple minutes to dry, and then you could go in with a couple heavier coats after that. Like I said earlier, I like to cover my mistakes in these videos, so now that we're airbrushing, there is potentially going to be quite a few of them. But initially, I didn't have any problems. I started off with this Vallejo Pru Pink, and I just kind of laid it on in all of the pink areas of Neel. Right now what I'm doing is what you call blocking in your colors. So my intention was to start with this pink color, put it down where I needed it, and then eventually move on to the base coat of blue and kind of create a gradient effect where the pinkish color meets or becomes the bluish color. I'm putting some of this pinkish color on the eyes right now. If you look at reference photos, Neel does have the slightest amount of little pinkish shade showing through around his eyes. So went ahead and did that, and then finished the other areas that I needed to be pinkish. While it's definitely a little hard to see, this is the final product of that first round of pinkish color, but I will go back later and apply a darker color. So then I started spraying the blue, and this is when I started running into trouble. Right here in the video, it looks like it's coming out fine, but in actuality, it was coming out way too fast, way too thick, and the lines were just way too defined. I was losing the kind of gradient lines that I was messing with a little bit earlier, and I ended up getting really frustrated because I tried to fix this over and over again. I tried to clean the airbrush, kind of just did all kind of things, and nothing was working. So use this as a PSA for if you get frustrated, just put it down and come back the next day. And that is exactly what I did, and I had much better success the next day. I was able to go around the entire helmet with this Vallejo blue color. I'm going to talk a little bit more about all the colors I used a little later once I'm done painting, but I was able to go around the entire helmet, including the ears, and kind of create a nice little gradient effect. At some point when I was finished painting that last blue color, I was looking at it and I was like, that's really blue. It's a little bit more blue than I wanted it to be. And then I realized I used the wrong color, which was just great. So then I started kind of going around and just kind of hitting certain areas with another type of blue that I had. What I really wanted was depth. I didn't want just one solid blue color. I wanted several. So I went with the first blue. I went into certain areas with the second blue, and then here coming up, I'm gonna abandon the airbrush and sponge on a different other blue. So I actually saw people doing this kind of method with Keimer, the Stranger from the Acolyte helmets, sponging on different colors. So here you see I'm just dabbing another type of blue onto the top. This kind of was trial and error. It's the first time I'd ever done it, and it took me a little while to kind of get a tone and a just kind of overall look that I was sort of happy with. Yeah, so I had two different types of sponges. I had paper towels. I used my hand. I used whatever I could to kind of get a different look, because skin's not uniform, skin's not perfect, so I thought, oh well, it'd be cool if I had different colors or textures on the skin. I also used that same method to go back and apply that darker pink color that I mentioned earlier in the video to all the tan areas. And once that was done, I started to go over all of the recessed areas, so like on the trunk and the eyes, with my pastels, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth. These pastels are, I guess, a little bit like chalk, so you just kind of pick the color you want, you scrape off a little bit in a little container or something, and then you apply it just like I am here. Neel's hair was a turquoise color, so I didn't have that on hand, so I had to mix it. I did quite a few different tests to kind of get a color that I liked, and what I kind of landed on was a really rich bluish color. Not bluish, blue. a really rich blue color, and then a dark green. And then when I kind of got that to a color I liked, I started adding white just to kind of tone it down a little bit, and that gives you the final color that you see here. So after letting that dry for a little while, I went back and I did what we call dry brushing. This is just putting a little, I combined a little and a lot, but a little bit of paint on your brush, wiping most of it off, and then kind of just skating across the high points. This kind of does what I was talking about with the skin. It just adds depth and layers, and if you wanted to go back, you could even do like a wash to really get in like the creases of the hair. But for the dry brush, all I did was add a little bit more white to the color that I used on the hair and dry brushed it. I have to give full credit to Michaela at MM's Prop Shop on the technique I'm about to use with these eyes. I'm going to put her channel down in the description. Go check her out. She's one of the best. But I purchased these clear acrylic ornaments off of Amazon. And that's just kind of the outer shell, just to give you a really nice glossy look. And then in Tinkercad, I made the white little half circle that's gonna replicate the little white part of your eye. And then in Photoshop, I made the iris and the pupil of Neel's eye, and I printed that on water slide decal paper. Using this decal paper on such a rounded object the first time I've ever used it probably wasn't the best choice on my end, but I'm gonna kind of glue them into the head using hot glue and kind of position them to where you can't really tell how badly they came out, I guess. So thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to hit that subscribe button, and I hope you enjoy the final reveal.